2 million years ago, a small group of early humans huddled together as the sun went down. Somewhere in the trees around them, something was watching. By morning, 3 of them were gone. This happened again and again for 1 million years. And that night is still living inside you. Right now, somewhere in your house, in the dark, there's a shape in the corner of the room that isn't quite a chair anymore. There's a sound in the hallway that isn't quite the pipes. You know, logically, that nothing is there. And yet some part of you refuses to believe it. So what is that part? Where does it come from? And why has it survived millions of years of progress that should have made it obsolete? To understand this, you have to go back to a version of Earth with no fire, no walls, and no locks. For most of human history, night wasn't just dark. It was the most dangerous part of every single day. Our ancestors had terrible night vision compared to the animals hunting them. Leopards, hyenas, and large cats could all see clearly in conditions where a human was almost completely blind. Anthropologists studying predation patterns in early hominins have found that a disproportionate number of ancient human remains show signs of nocturnal predator attacks. Darkness wasn't a mood, it was a kill zone. In 1897, a psychologist named Stanley Hall ran one of the first large-scale surveys ever conducted on human fear. He collected thousands of responses from children and adults across dozens of cultures and asked a simple question: what are you afraid of? Fear of the dark came back near the top of the list every single time, regardless of country, religion, or upbringing. Hall noted something strange in his data. Children who had never experienced anything harmful in the dark, who had loving parents, safe homes, and no traumatic memories, were still afraid of it. The fear wasn't being taught. It was already installed. Decades later, psychologist Vanessa LoBue took this further. She ran a series of experiments testing how quickly infants and toddlers detected potential threats in their environment. What she found was that very young children, some barely old enough to walk, could pick out threatening shapes and detect signs of danger faster in low light than in full daylight, even when nothing in the room had actually changed. Their brains weren't reacting to what was there. They were reacting to what could be there. The uncertainty itself was the trigger. And here's what makes this stranger. This isn't a fear that fades as children learn more about the world. Cross-cultural studies have found that some form of nighttime fear appears in nearly every human population ever studied, from isolated tribes with no exposure to modern media, to children raised in brightly lit cities who have never once been in true darkness. If fear of the dark were purely learned, from parents, from stories, from monster movies, it should look wildly different depending on where you grew up. It doesn't. It shows up almost everywhere, in almost the same form. That's not a cultural pattern, that's a fossil. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. This fear doesn't just belong to children. It never actually leaves. It just goes quiet. Evolutionary psychiatrist Randolph Nesse coined a concept called the smoke detector principle. A smoke detector is designed to go off far more often than there's an actual fire, because the cost of a false alarm, a little noise, a little annoyance, is nothing compared to the cost of missing a real one. Nesse argued that fear works the same way. Evolution didn't build your nervous system to be accurate. It built it to be paranoid, because the ancestors who assumed the dark was safe when it wasn't didn't get a second chance to learn from the mistake. The ones who survived were the twitchy ones, the ones who flinched at shadows. You are descended specifically and only from the humans who were too scared of the dark to relax. That's why an adult standing in a familiar hallway in a house with locked doors and no predators for thousands of miles can still feel their heart rate spike when the lights go out. It's not irrational. It's ancient risk management, running exactly as designed on hardware that hasn't been updated since before agriculture existed. For most of history, humanity's answer to this fear wasn't therapy. It was fire, and later, light. When cities began installing street lamps in the 1600s and 1700s, crime dropped. But something else happened too. People reported feeling calmer at night almost immediately, even in areas where the actual danger had never been that high to begin with. Light didn't just illuminate the street, it quieted something ancient. And when electric light finally reached almost every home on Earth, an entire category of nighttime dread that had haunted humans for hundreds of thousands of years quietly disappeared from daily life for the first time ever in a single generation. Except it didn't disappear. It just went dormant. Studies on temporary blackouts and total darkness retreats have found that even modern adults, People who have never experienced a predator in their life report a measurable spike in anxiety within minutes of losing all artificial light. Heart rate increases. Attention sharpens. The body starts scanning corners it hasn't scanned in years. The ancient system isn't gone. It's just been sitting quietly in a well-lit room for 200 years waiting. And that's the uncomfortable part. Every nightlight, every phone screen left glowing at 2 a.m., every hallway light left on out of habit isn't really about seeing better. It's a 2 million-year-old negotiation between you and the dark, and somewhere deep in your nervous system, that negotiation has never actually been closed.